We kind of, when we're planning series and we think about what we're going to teach, did we ruin everything, Mason? Did we ruin everything on the stage?
No.
One of the things that we kind of talk about is we kind of look, and some of the planning we do far out, and then sometimes we like to kind of leave some space open to say, like, what maybe do students need to hear in kind of this time frame that we're in? And so we kind of...
Bad. I know.
Jeez. Oh, okay. So we think about where are maybe our students, and one of the things, I remember we were brainstorming, we were actually working on that whiteboard, and we had this open date, and it was tonight, and we said, like, what kind of message do we want our teenagers to hear that night? And I remember eventually we got to somehow kind of saying, like, meat and potatoes of, like, Christianity, and then we eventually, from that, said, like, what if we kind of just all open up and shared a little bit about, like, how the heck did we get from, being a rodeo clown to being a worship leader in Brentwood, Tennessee, or from Donegal, Ireland, to now being married to a girl from Franklin, Tennessee, and being a youth minister in Brentwood, Tennessee. And so, like, how the heck did we get here? And also, like, opening up a little bit about this stuff that we teach you about, we don't necessarily have it all figured out. And so kind of creating an open opportunity to share about kind of a little bit of our faith walk and answer vulnerably some questions from you guys. So we have some basic questions that we feel like we'll get to, but in the last session we just kind of opened it up to, like, what questions do you have for us? And we started there, and then we'll kind of move on. So please keep the questions respectful and, like, semi on topic. Like, we answered a few goofy ones last session, but, for the most part, respectful. So what questions might you have for this ragtag group of youth ministers?
Good one.
Was that, like, legitimate, like you want to know that, or are you just reading things?
I don't not want to know it.
So, somebody want to answer? Do you ever feel like... The question was, do you ever feel like you're just going through the motions? What's this? I can't... How do you get back on track?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's something that I think, everybody we have to check ourselves in a bit. But how do you get back on track? For me, I sort of push away kind of the crap, I guess, that is just kind of weighing me down, especially when it comes to either picking songs or a song's not working all that well, and it's not, like, connecting as well as I would want to. I sort of, like, just push all that away, and I just kind of get down to, like, what the song is saying or what my role here at Brentwood is, and that's to be a minister to you guys and to hopefully connect you guys through worship to God. So yeah, how do you get back on track? Just kind of push away all the stuff that doesn't really matter, and try to refocus.
I wish we all answered yes to this in the last. Everyone get their chance, but the theme was yes. And as I thought about this, we were worshiping just now. I wish I had said the things that don't get me back on track, and that's what I'm learning. Like, yes, all the time. I feel like you're just going through the motions. And I'd say when your spiritual life and your job life intersect, it's even harder, I found. And how do you get back on track? I think the thing that doesn't work for me is gossiping about whatever, or over-talking or over-sharing about the thing that's burdening me or hurting me, or overthinking it. Any over-analyzers in the room? Like, just constantly dwelling on the same problem over and over. Like, it's just how do you get back on track is literally, like, it's just, you've got to have a laser focus. You've got to be focused on the heart of what you're doing, and the reason we're called. And it goes back to just a simple grace. But there are things definitely that do not get us back on track. I think I'm learning those.
Yeah, kind of like to go along with what she said, the whole gossiping thing, I think it's okay to like get your emotions out and like your thoughts out like to another human and like gossip or whatever you want to call it. But if there's if after you're done gossiping or talking about whatever you're going through, there's no action, then that was worth nothing. Like you have to be able to talk about it and then be like, okay, and I feel this way, so I'm going to, if that makes any sense.
Certainly haven't mastered that.
Oh yeah, I have no clue how to do that. Okay.
Okay, one is like, how do you know you have a good relationship with God, and how do you know what you need to work on? Like, how do you know that what you're doing right now isn't good, not good enough, but could be better? I don't know.
I guess for me, it's like how close do I feel to God? I don't really put it on a scale as such, I'm a 7 right now, but when was the last time I talked with God? When was the last time that I was in conversation with the Lord about something, or do I feel Him close to me? Do I feel Him near? That's kind of my gauge on, if I'm in a foul mood, or if I'm going through something, am I just going to, if I find myself distance from God, then I'm going to try and handle it myself. I'm going to try and do it all myself because I can do it. But if I find myself that I'm close and walking closely with the Lord, then I find my conversations different. That I'm inviting God into this conversation as opposed to me walking through it solo. For me.
For me, it's, and I mean, of course, I think people that are around me a lot get tired of this question, but I'm constantly asking myself and asking others, how is it with your soul? It's a Wesleyan question, and it truly gets to for me, it gets to the essence of for me to say how it is with my soul is also to say how it is with my relationship with God. If my soul is longing and feeling distant, I'm probably really distant from God. If my soul feels content and joyful, I'm probably pretty close to God. And so for me, knowing whether my relationship's going well is being able to be open and vulnerable and honest about it, especially with people that I know love and care about me. So for me, weekly check-ins with the men's accountability group, where they're asking me hard questions about my relationship with God, that I have to confess, yes, I did really well at seeking Christ every day this week, or no, I did a really crappy job of seeking Christ in everything I did this past week.
Are there days that you just don't want to come to work?
Yes. And sometimes they're even Sundays.
Yes.
I mean, I have the microphone, so that's great. But my wife is a pastor as well, and I will tell you there is 2 out of, well, I'm afraid to say how many it is. Several Sundays a month, Carlisle will have the conversation of, what if we weren't pastors and we just got to sleep in on Sunday morning? We had that conversation. Ministry is like other jobs at times. It can be wearing. It can be draining. Today I have to go to this 3-hour meeting, and that's going to be so long, and blah, blah, blah. But what keeps you coming back is the moments where we hang out with you guys, and it's awesome,
Yeah, we had a meeting, I think this past week, or I don't know. But to the meeting, they gifted they gifted me an alarm clock because I don't show up very often.
Yeah, the next day he was late.
And the next day I was late to the meeting, yeah. So
Batteries.
Yeah, it didn't have batteries. They didn't. So yeah, there's a lot of days where I don't want to come. I don't know if that's because I'm 20 and lazy or...
No, I mean, adults in the room, are there days that you just don't want to go to your job? Yeah, they're shaking their heads. Absolutely. I think we all have days like that. We just don't. And Herschel and I were actually talking about this tonight because, of course, we have a little one. And so Sunday nights or Sundays in general are long days. He's in daycare all day, and it feels so unfair. And he was talking about, loving his small group guys, but but feeling that tension of like, it's really hard to go home late and have a kid be off rhythm. And like, we both just agreed, like, ministry is sacrifice. It is. And we signed up for this. And we believe that we're making, by making his group a priority and making you guys a priority, that's an example that we want to leave for ourselves. So it's a sacrifice, and absolutely there are days that we don't want to be here. I hope that didn't hurt anybody's feelings, but yes.
What do you do when you and Herschel or you and Carla are at a different spot with God? Does that cause tension in your relationship?
I'll answer that because Caitlin grew up Baptist, and so Caitlin's family, actually where we met was at Brentwood Baptist, and so Caitlin's family grew up there, and so there's a difference already, like in Methodist traditions, and Caitlin's been coming here to worship on Sunday mornings, which has been awesome, but it's been new for her. And so, for example, for Caitlin to see like a female in the pulpit, I mean, that was not that she doesn't disagree with that, but she'd never known that. And so also like a child got baptized, and so Caitlin also, not that she disagrees with that, but she's never seen that in her church. And so there's differences already in faith traditions, but there's also times too whenever we're walking through and I might view something differently to what Caitlin might view. I mean, if in this room we have differences of opinions and differences of beliefs, imagine if we all believed the same thing, we'd be like a bunch of robots. And so, like, it's cool that we have differences in opinions. And like Caitlin will also challenge me to think about this thing in a different way, and I may challenge her also. So.
I would say, yeah, it is a little bit difficult sometimes, and I'll just say when it's just because of my personality. Like he was saying, Caitlin would challenge him to think a different way. Often Herschel, I know it's surprising, but he's probably the more faithful one of our duo, and like he's often challenging me to think differently, and I'm like, I don't want to think like that. I don't want to, or like I don't believe that, or I don't want to believe that. I want to be stuck in my thing. But I will say, at the end of the day, I'm very grateful because I feel like we're often in two different spots. But that's why I married him. Like he grows me and challenges me and pushes me outside of like what I think I have all together.
So it can definitely be difficult, especially, Carlisle and I work at different churches. We go to worship together about 3 times a year, that are a very actual, like, this is a worship service. But we find other times that are worshipful that we grow in our relationship with Christ. And it took me a long time to kind of realize, like, we both have a lot of youth ministry experience. So sometimes it's easy to come home and be like, I have this idea or this frustration or whatever, and we try to fix it for the other person because we know youth ministry, and we're like, well, what about this? Or what about, and slowly I kind of realized, and I had to kind of remember back to, like, the passage I had read to Carlisle on our wedding day, and that's Ephesians, and it says, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. Willing, and Christ loved the church, be willing to lay down his life. And so it's that sacrificial love. And I have to remember that it's like, I'm not there to fix everything for her. I'm there to love and care for her. And that our relationship with God is not necessarily always like doing youth ministry. Our relationship with God is a covenant that we created with God, and that we accepted from God. And for us, it can be challenging because sometimes, we've gone through hard seasons in our marriage, and we've had really joyous ones. And it's constantly reminding each other that our opportunity to be in ministry and to be in covenant with each other is a blessing. It's our blessing. It's not our curse. Even when it feels like maybe it's our curse, it's truly our blessing. And so being reminded of that and reminding each other of that when we're kind of down. For me, it's kind of crazy to say this, and I don't know if it's always true, but it's like, I feel like when I've had my darkest seasons, and this is where it's a God-like thing, Carlisle's in kind of her upswing. And when I'm kind of in my upswing, she's having a darker season. And so we're able to hold each other up. And that truly is, to me, is kind of the beauty about that. Gabe?
When did prayer start feeling real to you guys?
I kind of, when we whiteboarded this a lot, and prayer was one of the things that I kind of brought up, so I'll start. But early on in my faith life, prayer was really, really easy for whatever reason, which is really weird because now it's probably one of the hardest things for me, to be honest. So it was really easy. It was just like, I was like, it's nighttime, I'm about to go to bed, I'm going to pray. And I like had this mental list that I prayed and I just did it. And maybe that was real, I don't know. But I think the time that it kind of became the most challenging and then came into a real phase in my life where I was really like, this prayer is doing something. I went through this weird kind of phase when I was in seminary. And I was really frustrated with prayer, and I said, I'm just going to stop praying. And so I just stopped praying for a long time. And the only prayer that I would say was a Jesus prayer, Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And it was about the only thing I prayed because I was really kind of in a doubtful stage. Some of it had to do with stuff that was going on in my personal life. Some of it had to do with the deep study in theology and seminary. But coming out of that, made prayer real because prayer, it's tuning our hearts to God, but it's like whatever, kind of like the woman that comes and offers everything that she has. I think prayer can be that to God too, that we're just offering whatever little bit it is we have and understanding we have as prayer. God accepts that. And so it became real to me in that it was like this little prayer that I was saying was acceptable to God because that was the most I could give in that stage.
For me, I have a specific time I remember when it kind of clicked that I was like, oh, this is real. You guys don't really know me all that well, but I grew up in the church, going to church every Sunday, and I played in the youth praise band and, did all the things. And one summer, I remember my church, we were having a revival. So like every night we had a time of like a worship time. And I remember I was getting ready to go off to school. And I was really, really nervous. I was getting ready to go to a music school up in Boston, and I was really, really scared about leaving my home and leaving my friends. And I started getting into my head like weeks and weeks and weeks prior to this revival. I started getting into my head about like, what if I move up there, and what if I don't make any friends up there? What if I don't they don't like how I sing, or they don't like the music I write, or all this stuff, weeks in advance of this revival. And one night we were sitting there and we were singing a song. Can't remember what it was, but I just felt this really, really deep sorrow in me. So in the middle of the service, I walked out of the sanctuary and I went back into this back conference room, and went back even further into this conference room where there's this prayer room that they had, and I just laid down and I started crying my eyes out because I was so scared. I was so scared to leave. I was so scared to put myself out there in a way that had never happened before. I come from a really small town in Texas, so to be honest, I was the dude there. You know what I mean? So I was really, really nervous that people wouldn't like me, and I remember laying there for 10 minutes crying, literally, and I heard audibly, get up, go to the table, and just open up the Bible. Audibly, I heard it, and so I got up, and it was the weirdest thing. I was sitting there crying, and it was instantly nothing. I heard it, and I just stopped. So I got up and I go over to the table and I open up the Bible, and it was just one of those things where I knew God was finding me in my moment exactly when I needed him most. And what I opened up to was Colossians 3:23, which I don't know if you guys know, but it says, in all that you do, work as if working for the Lord and not for men. And that time for me was it was incredible. But to answer your question, that is, for me, that's when I really felt the presence of God, where I really felt the power of prayer and crying out to him in your deepest, most sorrowful place, that he's there and he's ready to answer. So
I think for me, it's when I decided that prayer didn't have to be super formal. So I'm in my head all the time, conversation running constantly. And so I stopped having, it was just I don't know, I just stopped having conversations with myself and started having conversations with God. So those things that I was constantly thinking on and stirring on, instead of feeling guilty about constantly being in my head, and I just moved that conversation, I feel like, towards a conversation with God. You know, it says pray without ceasing, and I'm like, what am I going to do? Be on my hands and face all day, like hands folded? And then it just clicked, like, no, like those moments when I'm in my head, or I'm thinking, or I'm wondering, or I'm anxious, like I'm just constantly, being in conversation.
Yeah, this past year for me has been like really difficult. Like I'm kind of new to prayer, I guess. Like I was raised Catholic and stuff, but I was kind of forced into religion, right? So I didn't find it for myself. But this past year I've been like getting to know God and stuff. And the same thing with Lee. Like, well, hold on, let me backtrack. At first, like when I started this job, and like I remember like one of my first days, they were like, okay, Juan, since you're new, you're gonna, like we were at a staff meeting, you're gonna pray. And I was like, what? Like it was terrifying. I don't remember what I said. I probably was like, thank you, God. Like I don't even know. It was probably awful.
I think you just said no. Like,
I probably did. I mean, that sounds like something I do. But and like all of last semester, I guess, like until December, I was like terrified of praying. I was like, what the heck? Like, especially like out loud, that's like crazy to me. But no, it's not anymore. And like Lee said, like I just kind of have a conversation going on in my head, kind of like all day long with God. It's weird. I don't know how to explain it, but like, yeah. And like my car is like my best friend. Like if I'm in my car, honestly, I don't know how I get, like I'll get somewhere and I don't remember how I got there because I'm like, I don't know.
it's terrifying.
It is terrifying. Yeah. So yeah. Any more questions?
Worst day on the job ever.
Oh, girl. Ever?
Ever. Doesn't have to be this job. Could be any job. But probably this one.
Worst day on the job ever? Worst day on the job. I worked at a church in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and it was like a drop-in center, and so it just wasn't like a youth group like this where we came into worship. It was like we had like kind of like a game room and like a big hall where they came in and played soccer and stuff like that. So kids just came in and dropped in, and they could leave whenever they wanted. But one night, I walked in and there was a bunch of guys, and they came in and they were drunk, and they were like 16, 17-year-old guys, and they had pool cues, and they were like swinging them like this and like trying to hit each other with the pool cues. And I'm like walking in and I'm like, guys, like stop this. And one guy puts down the pool cue and comes at me and like he's drunk, and he tries to punch me, and I'm like, oh, well, this is awesome, this is great. And so like anyway, I get out of the way, but I have to go and like run and call the police. And so we have the police come into our youth building, and police like take away some of our young people. And so that we had to actually bar them from the youth club for a couple of weeks. So that was not a great day on the job. I've had better.
I think one of my worst is also one of my best a little bit. I've mentioned this several times before. In Clarksville, we lost a 14-year-old student, and so I went. She was a patient at St. Jude or Le Bonheur in Memphis, and so I went to visit her family. And she had an older brother that was also one of our students, and he was just collapsed on the floor next to his sister, who he knew was going to die. And I sat there and held him for an hour or 2 hours, and it was terrible. To walk through that, but in the same time I knew it was like this is why God gave me a heart that breaks for teenagers, is so I can sit there with them in these moments. And then I drove back to Clarksville, where I knew probably by the time I got back that she would have passed, and we just opened our doors to teenagers, and we just sat there and celebrated her life, and cried and prayed and hugged and all of that. So by the end it felt like a celebration, but it was one of the hardest days on the job.
I have a couple, probably I shouldn't share just like for confidentiality, but I think maybe your assumption would be that like we all get along all the time, and it's not true. We do love each other, and we're a family, and we fight for each other, and really do care about each other. But there are days that we just don't see eye to eye about things, and that's really difficult. And sometimes, we work really, really hard to resolve that before we walk out the door, because that matters to us, that we're unified as a team so that we lead well and love well. But it doesn't always happen, and there have been bad days when, it feels like we're not all on the same page, and we have to leave this place. And I mean, I'm the only girl up here, and not that only girls do this to be gender stereotype, but sometimes I just can't let that go. I can't, I take that home with me, and it affects my home life. And so yeah, been plenty of those for sure. Oh, did you have one? No, go ahead.
Well, it's not okay. It's not really like. I'll tell the story. It's not real serious, but my worst day. Adam knows this story. I told at lunch that one day, because I guess it's kind of my bad. Okay, so it was my first official day here at Brentwood, and it was. I came, I guess it was a Tuesday. Yeah, it was a Tuesday. I came, I had staff meeting. It was awesome. Everything was great. I stuck around for quite a while afterwards. I was here. I don't know. I was just here for a while. Anyway, I'm driving home, and I'm almost to my house, and I see cop lights behind me. So I was like, what is happening? I'm not speeding. What's the deal? So I pull over, and this cop comes up. She was a woman, super nice. She was like, hey, just no worries. Just letting you know, your tag lights are out. And we're doing this new thing, like your tag lights have to be like lit up. It's a rule or something. I was like, oh, okay. Wow, whew, sorry. I thought, whatever. She was like, no, it's cool. Can I see your license? And at the time, my truck was still registered in Texas. So I gave her my license, which was a Tennessee license, and I'm thinking like, okay, here you go. And so she takes it, she goes back, and I'm sitting there in my truck just being like, oh gosh, I hope things are okay. And so she comes back to the window after about 5 to 7 minutes, and her attitude instantly changed. She was like, so what's the deal with your registration, man? And I was like, oh man, because I knew I was caught. Because essentially, my registration before I had switched it over, like a couple weeks ago, I was 3 years behind on my registration. Yeah, so she comes up and she's like, so what's the deal with the registration, man? And it kind of jarred me because she was so nice just a second ago, and I was like, and so I gave her the story, like, I'm here in Nashville, I haven't done it. And the thing is, I didn't have a good excuse. The excuse was I just was irresponsible. And so I was trying to tell her that, and she was really not having it. She was like, your story doesn't make sense, man. I don't, where do you live? And I was trying to tell her, like, I live sort of like, over here, just to say, like, I'm really close to my place. But she's just like super mad, and she was like, man, your story doesn't make sense. You can't tell me where you live. And I was like, 4689 Long Branch, that's exactly where I live. And she was like, all right, well, if I check your truck, will I find anything that you shouldn't be here? And I was like, no, ma'am, you can check the whole thing, I don't care. And so she's like, step out of the car. And so I step out of the car, and she's like, you don't have any weapons on you or anything, do you? And I was like, no, I don't. And I had told her, she said, where are you coming from? And I said, I'm the new worship leader at, Brentwood United Methodist. And I don't think she believed me, but, so anyway, she was like, all right, turn around. And so I'm literally on the side of the road with my hands up, and she's patting me down, looking for things. And she touched this pocket right here, and she's like, what this? And I was like, it's just chapstick, I swear. And like, so she says, okay, go stand back by my deputy. So I stand back by her deputy, and I'm talking. She's like, so where do you say you lead worship? And I was like, it's Brentwood United Methodist. It's over there. And I'm sort of like, I'm getting kind of emotional because this is like the third time I've been stopped for my registration. So I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm not feeling too good. And so she's searching the front of my truck, and she pulls out this little baggie, it has some white powder in it. And she says, what is this? And I put my hands up, and I said, can I come up? She was like, come on. And And I walk up and I say, my uncle owns a spice house in Austin, Texas, and these are spices he gave us for Christmas. and she was like, I can't remember what she said, but I was like, try it, it's really good. And she was like, no, I can smell the salt and pepper, it's all right. And I was like, okay. So then I walked back to the other deputy, and she finishes the front of the truck, which I obviously didn't have anything except for spices. And she's walking to the back seat, and I say, okay, hold on, 1 second. And she was like, what? And I said, now before you look in there, I have 2 hatchets back there. And she went, ha! Spices and hatchets, huh? And I say, yep. And so she checks the back seat. She doesn't find anything but my hatchets. And she gets back in, and she comes up to me, and she's like, now listen, man, I gotta shoot you straight. I gotta give you a ticket. Because she was like, if you get pulled over again and they see that I stopped you and I didn't ticket you, yada, yada, yada. And I literally put my hand on her shoulder, and I say, I beg you, please don't give me a ticket. And she didn't. She ended up giving me a ticket, which was a real bummer. So anyway, $200 later, that was my worst day. Sorry that took so long. Yes, I did. And see, the thing that I was trying to also explain to her, but I was so like I couldn't get it out, was literally the Friday before I got my admissions test done to do it. And I was gonna go, something came up, I wasn't able to do it. I couldn't do it Monday, couldn't do it Tuesday, but I was literally gonna do it the next day. And I say, I have my admissions test, I'm literally gonna go do it tomorrow. It didn't matter, she still ticketed me.
Okay, mine's not as funny, but no, you're good. My worst day on the job. So my first job, okay, I worked at Opry Mills Mall. Okay, I was hired as the photographer for the Easter Bunny set, okay? Hold on, gets better. So, all of a sudden, this was like deep into the Easter season, so I had already, all of a sudden our Easter Bunny runs away, right? Like it's a man in a costume, and he runs away from the egg castle that we have, and he leaves his costume like deep in the mall, and I have to go and strap up as the Easter Bunny. And then, I didn't say the rest of the story in the other session, but so halfway through I was like burning up. It's hot. It's a hot costume. There's no ice bags or anything. It's not Disney World. So, so I was like, I need a break. Like, Bunny can't talk, so I was like need a break. And we go, and I'm like taking this thing off. I'm like, I quit. Like, I have to quit. So I also run away. But so then, like on my way, not home, but like back to get my clothing that I normally wear, I get a call, and they're like, you can't quit. And 17-year-old me was like, you're right. So there I was, stuck as Easter Bunny all night. Yeah, I went back. So, best day on the job. I will not be your Easter Bunny.
If there's like one thing you could like tell your former self about your faith, like that you would actually like to believe yourself.
I think I would remind myself that you are loved and you are so worth love. And I think that's what I would tell, especially my teenage self.
I think mine is just God is bigger. Like there's a lot of instances when I was younger, and even now, where it feels like this situation is so huge, this is so hard, this is so, and I have to remind myself that God is bigger than this, and God has called me to higher. And that's, I think, again and again, I have to remind myself that I'm called, and like you said, that I'm loved, and that God will qualify me in every moment. To be the minister, to be the husband, to be the friend that I've been called to be.
Yeah, I think for me it would have been, it's not all about you. And I think whenever I was a teenager, like I was I was playing really competitive soccer and rugby, and I thought, I thought I was a big shot. Like I thought I was the best guy on the soccer team. I thought that I was the one that was going to make it. I thought I was, I thought I was something. And then I was too good. I was too big for faith. I was too big for God. I thought, I don't have time for that. And so I pushed God off until I was like 17. And so I wish that I could just, hit myself on the side of the head, to go back and just say, wake up.
For me, probably just in the biggest, boldest letters, in the biggest, loudest voice, I would just say, listen more. I shared that story earlier about praying and kind of that experience. But well, it's not great, but the weird thing about being a Christian and having this faith is that doubt comes with the territory. Like even if you every single day, there's always going to be that one, that 1 to 5 minute gap of you doubting of, something. And for me, like sort of similar to Derek, like growing up, I enjoyed worship leading, but I didn't really give it my full attention because I was too big for it. You know what I mean? I knew that I was going to come to Nashville and I was going to be famous, and Luke Bryan was going to open for me, and you know what I mean. And just so you guys know, that actually didn't happen. Yeah. But like the whole thing is like I gave this earlier, and I think I botched it in the middle school group. But growing up and especially moving here to Nashville, my field of vision was like this big, and all I could see was just like this dream, this music dream that I wanted to like write songs and sing and all this stuff. And the thing about like this field of vision is that leading worship, if you can just imagine like somebody standing in the wings, like just like in the peripheral, it was always just like standing there. Just always standing there, just literally saying, I'm here, I'm waiting, whenever you're ready. And I went through a lot of heartache, a lot of like bad times because I didn't listen to that, and because I didn't just step up to that calling. So just, man, listen more.
Yeah.
I'm going to preface this and say that I'm not trying to deliver a message that was handed to me by somebody else, but if for some reason you couldn't be in ministry anymore, what would you do? What would your career profession be?
Davis asked you this, didn't he? He's trying to get rid of me. It's been, well, now, honestly, yeah, it would be, Lee's whispering in my ear. I love to fish. I would love to make that a life. I don't know how exactly I would do that. I'd be poorer than I am being a minister. But I used to say that I would love to be a fireman. Like, I know that's like a little kid thing, but like when I was
Tough.
I know. When I was in my younger 20s, like I thought about it, I was like, if I didn't do that, or like join the Coast Guard or something like that and be on the water or something. So
They're all,
now I really want to kind of open a restaurant called Preacher's Corner, but I don't know. I think that's kind of funny. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. Go ahead, Mason.
I guess music, but I was also in high school. I was really involved in like theater and stuff. So I'd love to like be in plays, not so much musicals, but like plays in like the movies and stuff. So.
I think I'd want to be like the Easter Bunny. No, I'm just kidding. No, I literally same as Sam. Well, actually, okay, I have no clue what I'm doing. Like I don't know if ministry is like my thing yet or not. Like I'm still, yeah. Adam said we're aware. So I don't know. I'm looking at what?
How many colleges have you been at so far?
One, and don't fight me on that.
Don't be sassy.
Okay, look, listen. I know everyone has this question. I get this question at least once a week here.
Come on, Juan,
so I'm
bring
gonna
it.
clear it up.
Come on.
Okay. I did not quit college because I'm like a failure or anything. Like, college was not the place for me. It's specifically that college. Like, Lipscomb tore me down. Like, every wall, like, was built back up again. Like, my confidence was shot down. Like, my faith was dead. Everything. So, like, that was, like, leaving Lipscomb was the best decision I've ever made, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. That being said, I will probably go back to school. I will. I'm a good person.
And Juan should be if you're glad Juan's here, just can you like clap your hands or yeah.
No,
like
whatever.
Juan should be a testament to you. Like it's okay to stop and try to figure out what you're doing. Like don't keep going at something that's not working. I think this is a beautiful example and one that I probably should have done early on in my life and didn't. Big fail for me. What was the question? What would you be doing or something?
Yeah.
No, you go. I don't know. But, okay. I think I would be a writer. I think I want to write. Okay, I'll do it. Be a writer or, I don't know.
For me, if I was in ministry, I mean, growing up, I wanted to be a soccer player. Like, that was what I wanted to do. And wanted to do that, but obviously that didn't work out. Right now, I make stuff out of wood. I love woodworking. I make furniture and stuff, and so if I wasn't in ministry, I love doing that. That's my hobby, and it's something that I really like doing. So,
Yes.
How did you know for sure that like ministry was your calling?
It's good. How did you know ministry was your calling and what steps did you take to get there?
For me, it was, I came to faith later on in well, I guess like high school years. And so I felt like I was a little late to the ball game and really kind of struggled with like, I could never be a minister. Like I felt kind of that tug, but I could never be a minister because I didn't grow up in the church and I don't know enough about the church and all of that. And so for me, it really kind of came down to, as I learned about this person, Jesus, and as I tried to live like Jesus, it started to affect the people around me. And as I started to watch that, I was like, oh, wow, this is really awesome. And realized that like I could make a life out of loving people like Jesus did, and that could possibly change theirs. And for me, it just kind of all clicked, and at an eventual point that I was like, this is what I'm called to do. And then for me, it was kind of a gradual process of like, I need to go and I want to learn more about the Bible because I didn't grow up in church, and so I need to learn more, and that led to more education, and then kind of struggling with a calling towards ordination in the Methodist Church and stuff like that. And so there's a lot more details in there, but that was really most of it.
To preface my answer, I just want to say that you can do ministry in whatever career field that you do, like medical, music, whatever. But for me, and like I said, I don't know what I'm doing if ministry is like what I'm going to stick to, but for me it was kind of a slap in the face, like literally like God wrecked me. I'm going to rephrase that. God woke me up, okay? Last summer, I went on Juby tour, and that was like a huge, I crowd surfed. And that was the moment. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't know. Something just clicked, and then I went on Sunshine, and I went to Junaluska, and then Lee was like, "Oh, you're so good at this. Like, come get a job." It was just like too many things were leading me to ministry for me to be like, "No, I'm gonna go to New York now." Like I was already set to go to New York. I literally just had to pack my bags and go. But like so many things were just pointing me here to Bumsey and like just to ministry, and like if I had said no, that would have, I don't know. Yeah.
Growing up, I never knew really what a youth minister was, because I went to a church that had max 30 people on a Sunday, and like the average age was about like mid-60s, and so the youth group was me and my sisters, and so I never knew really what a youth minister was, and I seen that God was closing a lot of doors as to possibilities of the future, and there was a group that came in at a town, and they knew kind of that I didn't really know what I was going to do after high school, and I just recently had given my faith to the Lord when I was 17, and so they said, well, there's this gap year program that we're doing. I mean, why don't you try that out next year? Because, I mean, you're not doing anything else. And so I said, cool, I'll take a gap year. And so it was in that year where I interned basically in a church. And I explored my calling to youth ministry. I never knew that you could go to school to be a youth minister. I never knew that was a possibility. I never knew that I was going to go to college because my grades were awful. But God just opened doors. And I prayed, hey, God, would you direct me? And would you open doors? And would you... and I always ask God to speak to me through people. And God has always done that for me. And God has spoken to me through people. And that's kind of what's led me here as well. To study further and then also to work here. But, yeah.
Specifically, the question was how did we know it was our calling? Was that? Well, I kind of echo what Juan said. I think you could do ministry in whatever you're doing. It doesn't really have to be in like a church setting. But for me, gosh, I mean, I knew from really early on that I always really loved music, and I wanted to do something with it. And I really love, I love talking to people, even though it sort of goes against who I am, because at heart, like I'm kind of an introvert, so I get shy a lot. So, but when I talk to people and I'm having conversations, I really, really love that. And so a calling to, like, I guess in that way, minister to people, was very early on my heart, and that just sort of molded with music in a way that I can't really explain. This answer is kind of confusing, and I'm sorry, but like how'd I know? I just wanted to. Is that funny?
No, you're good.
Okay. I always loved talking to people, and I love doing music, and it just so happens that leading worship is a way to do both of those things. So
I feel like I probably knew from really early age, but I did not want to work in the church. Like I felt like I was called, but I like ran from that call for a really long time. And so I pursued a different undergraduate degree, a different graduate degree, spent a lot of money and a lot of time doing something that, I mean, I definitely think played into what I'm doing here, but was not ultimately, like, I didn't just get a religious studies degree and go straight to seminary. And so I kind of changed careers. But I've been really convicted this year, and I think this is what you guys have been saying, but I think there's sort of this idea that we're called to one thing, and I think ultimately, like, we're just called to be followers of Jesus. And so when I think about, like, how did I get this calling to youth ministry? It's like, Jeff, how did you get the calling to be a doctor? It's like this lifelong thing. And the truth is like, don't fire me for this, but like, I don't know if the calling to youth ministry is a season, if it's forever. I don't know that. So I don't know that I have like this exact call story to be in youth ministry, more than like, I just felt like God was pulling on my heart to be in this place, and this is where I ended up, and this is where God is using me. And so ultimately, I just want to be a follower of Christ, and wherever that calling leads next is, yeah. Is that too churchy? All right.
So we went a little bit over, just by a slight few seconds. But all this to be said, so sorry that we took up all your small group time almost. But all this to be said, like, we want you guys to realize that we are real people that love you and care about you, and that we want to be here for you. We want to sit down and talk with you through your hard questions. And we want to share about our lives with you. So that you know who we are, you know our hearts, and we want to know your hearts. So please, if you have more questions about faith, about callings in ministry, and about following Christ, the offer is always, we will pay for the coffee, we will pay for the ice cream, we'll pay for the lunch or dinner or whatever it is. We'd love to sit down and talk with you. Let me pray for us, and then y'all can head to your small group.